In the first scenes, we see a nice nurse trying to communicate with a paralyzed patient. At some point, the nurse realizes that something terrible has happened to the woman. 5 weeks ago, Catherine Carter woke up from a 3-day coma. She was unable to move, vaguely remembering running through a dark forest from a car that was chasing her. All Catherine can do now is partially open her left eye. That fateful night, a car was speeding after her. Neurological nurse Nikki McKenzie is in charge of Catherine's rehabilitation. The medical staff is still unsure if the patient is conscious. Lena Carter came to the clinic and asked about Catherine's condition. McKenzie explained that the patient is in a vegetative state, also known as locked-in syndrome. McKenzie promised to do everything possible to help Catherine and asked Lena to talk about her. 13 years ago, when Lena's mother passed away, Catherine became her legal guardian, and the rolling estate became her home. Back then, Catherine was wealthy, glamorous and famous. Lena loved her very much. But everything went downhill when Catherine's husband passed away. It turned out that he had bequeathed everything to his son Jamie, and this poisoned their relationship. Lena became the link that held the family together. She managed to befriend Jamie, who suffered from epilepsy. Despite everything, Catherine took care of her stepson, though very reluctantly. Lena helped her with this. One day, for the first time in 2 years, Catherine was preparing to meet with a director. She used to act in films. Lena promised to take care of Jamie. Catherine had no doubts about that, but she believed her stepson was taking advantage of his seizures whenever she focused on her own life. Lena sadly said that he probably missed his father. The girl understood better than anyone how it felt to lose a loved one. While Catherine was away, Lena and Jamie watched a TV series featuring her. Then they had a heartfelt conversation. Jamie knew what had happened to Lena's mother, a very talented woman who played the piano. The boy didn't remember his real mother at all. His memories of the father were also fading because Catherine had gotten rid of most of the photos. Lena took Jamie's hand and said that they had each other now. In the present, seeing Catherine in bruises in a wheelchair, Lena didn't recognize her at first. Later, Nurse McKenzie said that according to the police, Catherine had been hit by a car. McKenzie couldn't understand how Catherine could be both Lena's foster mother and mother-in-law. The girl replied that it was complicated. 3 years ago she and Jamie got married. Lena had always taken care of Jamie and felt that he needed her. But Catherine considered Lena was a money hunter, not believing in the sincerity of her desire to be part of the family. During the wedding, Catherine had a fit of hysterical laughter. She couldn't believe that the orphan girl she had once taken in was now going to become the rightful mistress of the estate. Despite everything, Lena enjoyed the most important day of her life, but Jamie knew that Catherine cared only about the house, not about them. All evening Catherine behaved provocatively, playing the role of the estate's mistress. Jamie wanted to ruin her fun, but a seizure stopped him. It caught the attention of all the guests. Their family doctor, Robert Lawrence, carried Jamie upstairs. When the young man came to, the doctor reminded him about the incompatibility of his medication with alcohol. But Jamie was tired of all the restrictions and was not going to comply with the doctor's recommendations. Robert strongly advised him to be more careful. Lena thanked the doctor for his help. In the present, Lena continues to visit Catherine regularly at the hospital. Nurse McKenzie is actively working on the patient's rehabilitation. When McKenzie suggested that Lena get involved, the girl was embarrassed but agreed. Seeing Catherine, she couldn't hold back her tears. McKenzie feels very sorry for the girl, whose loved ones suffer misfortune after misfortune. First Jamie, now Catherine. Lena doesn't remember this, but McKenzie also cared for Jamie. He had always been sick. After the seizures, something worse came along. Jamie never left the house, and neither did Lena, who had to take care of her husband. Catherine still lived in their home and helped Lena. She didn't like that Jamie was abusing analgesics. But he could no longer bear the pain. When Jamie asked his wife to promise she wouldn't leave him, Lena avoided answering. She was really tired. Dr. Lawrence regularly visits the estate to monitor the patient's condition. Lena asked where he got such an expensive car. Lawrence smiled and said he bought it on credit. Despite the cold weather, Lena was going for a swim. Lawrence followed her in his car, saying that there was a whole world beyond this estate. Lena felt sad at those words. The girl swam for a long time in the cold lake. She really had forgotten what the world outside this estate looked like. Later, Lena found her husband unconscious on the bed and yelled for Catherine to call an ambulance immediately. Jamie was hospitalized in critical condition. Lena spent the night in his ward. Dr. Lawrence came to support her. He was not only Jamie's attending physician but also a family friend. Nurse McKenzie noted that the dosage of painkillers prescribed to Jamie was too high. Robert clearly didn't like that his professionalism was being questioned. Asking the nurse for a private conversation, he expressed his displeasure. McKenzie firmly stated that the patient's well-being was now in her hands. One day Lena decided to visit Dr. Lawrence's office. Her sudden visit clearly pleased him. In tears, Lena said she was tired of wasting time saving someone who didn't want to be saved. On the other hand, she knew that her life without Jamie would be empty. Suddenly Robert asked when she last had fun. Lena replied that she didn't remember. Dr. Lawrence suggested she take a good break. Lena would love to, but she had no one to go with. Robert hinted that a good friend would come in handy. That night, Lena dreamed that she and Robert were swimming together in the lake. Meanwhile, Jamie slept next to her with an oxygen mask on. To keep from losing her mind completely, Lena kept a diary. During the day while swimming, she cut her foot. Just then, Dr. Lawrence arrived and offered to examine the wound, but the girl refused. Catherine noticed them together. Later, while treating Lena's foot, Catherine declared that she had more rights to the house than Jamie, as she had put everything into it. Lena didn't understand what Catherine was unhappy about, since no one had kicked her out of the estate for the past 10 years. All this time Lena had taken care of Jamie, who was more of a son or a child in her care than a husband. However, this didn't satisfy Catherine. She wanted to be the rightful mistress of the house. Lena said she no longer wanted to tolerate it. Later Jamie, who was unable to walk, watched as his wife and Dr. Lawrence played tennis. They seemed to be having fun together. That night while her husband slept, Lena went to a bar and ordered whiskey. She had called Robert in advance, who of course showed up. Lena was on the verge of a nervous breakdown and felt like she shouldn't be here. Robert offered to take her home. At one point Lena asked him to stop, and despite the rain she got out of the car. Robert followed her. Passion arose between them right there. In her spare time Catherine practices shooting. Today is her birthday, and Robert is coming to the estate for dinner. Catherine wants Lena to put on a little concert in honor of the occasion. Although Lena hadn't played in a long time, she had no reason to refuse. In the present, Mackenzie remembers seeing Catherine on television. She was a superstar. To find out what happened to Catherine, Mackenzie brought an alphabet board and asked the patient to blink when the correct letter was called. Seeing this, Lena became nervous. In the past, a social evening was held at the Rolling Estate in honor of Catherine's birthday. Hearing Lena play the piano, Robert was enchanted, which clearly irritated Catherine. Then it was time to serve the birthday cake. Catherine blew out the candles. Lena had baked this cake especially for her. Upon learning that the piano had not been a gift from her mother, but from Catherine, Lena became upset. Catherine began reminiscing about her friendship with Daniela, Lena's mother. Both women grew up in an orphanage, but unlike Daniela, Catherine had managed to escape poverty and become a Hollywood star. Out of envy, Daniela had broken off all contact with her. At that moment Lena couldn't hold back her emotions, tearfully saying that her mother had not been envious, and that it was just dirty slander from Catherine. The foster mother reminded Lena who had taken her to California for vacations and Disneyland as a child. Taking custody of Lena had been Catherine's initiative. Lena no longer intended to listen to this and left the table. Catherine continued to sneer, saying that in reality Lena didn't love them but only used. The girl declared that now this was her and Jamie's house, and Catherine wouldn't be able to do anything about it. When Lena left, Jamie said that she was in love not with him but with Catherine. From the moment she arrived, she had been seeking her love. As had Jamie for that matter. He also left the table, not knowing that Lena had overheard the end of the conversation from outside. Even before this, Robert had left her a note. Their affair continued. Catherine, who had been riding a horse near the estate that morning, noticed Robert's car. The lovers remained quiet to stay unnoticed. It's unclear if Catherine caught them, but she rode away regardless. It seems Jamie began to suspect something. When he mentioned that he knew about her diary, Lena became frightened. But Jamie assured that he hadn't read it because he respected her. Lena didn't believe her husband's sincerity, thinking that he had used his illness all his life to stay the center of attention. Jamie retorted, saying it wasn't his personal choice. Besides, without him Lena would be nobody. In her mind she screamed in helplessness. She didn't care if the husband knew about her affair, all Lena wanted now was to run away with her lover, even if it meant losing everything, including this house. Robert doubted it was a good idea, because if anyone found out about the family doctor's affair with the patient's wife, he could lose his medical license. Lena said she wouldn't let that happen. For now they continued to meet in secret. Lena couldn't handle it anymore, and it seemed Robert had a plan. Soon, thanks to a new medication, Jamie began feeling better and invited his wife on a picnic on the other side of the lake. Lena tried to find an excuse, but her husband was insistent, and Robert supported the idea. He volunteered to accompany them by the way. They set off in a boat. While Robert rowed, Lena struggled to contain her emotions. At one point Robert deliberately dropped an oar, and when he reached for it, the boat capsized. Everyone fell into the water. Jamie wasn't a good swimmer, and Lena desperately tried to keep her husband above water, but Robert began pulling him down. Lena called for help while Robert pretended to search for Jamie. A man chopping wood on the shore came to their aid, but it was too late. Lena was screaming, unable to stop. The police arrived, and Robert told his version of the events. Upon learning of her stepson's demise, Catherine fell into hysterics. Lena, however, was now in a detached state and didn't react when Robert approached her. All night, divers searched the lake for Jamie's body. Lena was haunted by nightmares. Catherine heard her sobbing but didn't know what to say. Mackenzie knows that Lena and Robert are involved. If Lena had divorced Jamie while he was alive, she would have lost everything. Lena screamed through her tears that it was just an accident. No one could have foreseen the boat would overturn. But Mackenzie feels that Lena isn't being truthful. Moreover, the nurse had never trusted Dr. Lawrence, who had prescribed too high a dose of painkillers to the patient. Soon the funeral took place. Robert barely hid his satisfied smile. Catherine was deeply grieving her stepson. Lena, on the other hand, was trying to release her emotions through music. That night, Lena had a nightmare about water flooding her entire house. Then Robert appeared to her. At some point Lena saw Jamie instead of him. Meeting with Robert, Lena said she couldn't be happy here and wanted to leave. Robert in turn wanted Lena to sell the house. This would allow them to live comfortably. Lena had no intention of doing so because it would leave Catherine with nothing. But Robert didn't care about Catherine. At that moment, Lena realized that all he cared about was money and that in reality he didn't love her. Robert had the foresight to steal Lena's diary, in which she often fantasized about harming Jamie. Lena didn't want to believe that the beloved was blackmailing her. Grabbing Lena, Robert said she was no better than him and was equally responsible for what had happened. Lena ran out of Robert's car in fear and went home, calling for Catherine. Because of the thunderstorm, the electricity in the house was out. Catherine was nowhere to be found. Looking out the window, Lena saw Robert's car. Going outside, Lena caught Robert and Catherine together. Could they be lovers? This was unbearable for her. Lena didn't want to stay here any longer and after packing some of her things, was about to leave, but Catherine blocked her way. She had already guessed that Lena was aware of Robert's infidelity. Unable to contain herself, Lena slapped Catherine. Outside, Robert tried to stop her. She screamed at him to get off her. Robert's attempts to explain himself were futile, and in a fit of rage he grabbed Lena. Managing to break free, she ran. Robert chased after Lena, repeating that he loved her, not Catherine. Lena ran into one of the rooms in the estate and barricaded the door. Robert and Catherine tried to convince her to open it. They feared Lena would go to the police. By the time Robert broke down the door, Lena had already escaped through the window into the next room. When Robert put his hand through the window, Lena injured him. Lena then found a rifle, but this didn't stop Catherine, who attacked her. A fight broke out between them. After wresting the rifle away, Catherine pushed Lena down the stairs. Robert eventually freed himself from the trap. Meanwhile, Catherine on horseback chased Lena into the woods. Bandaging his injured hand, Robert joined the pursuit in his car. Lena had no choice but to jump into the lake. But as soon as she got to shore, the pursuers caught up with her. Catherine fired. Mackenzie knows that Lena is hiding something, but she continued to stay silent. Catherine regained the ability to blink with one eye, and using a letterboard, Mackenzie realized that the patient had become an assassination victim. Lena told Robert that the medical staff was using the letterboard. Now, despite their past differences, they needed to act together, or they would both end up in prison. Lena suggested taking Catherine out of the hospital and finishing what they had started before she could speak. While Mackenzie called the police, Lena entered Catherine's ward. Mackenzie noticed Robert's car in the parking lot. Lena didn't want to hurt Catherine but had to protect herself. Robert brought a wheelchair into the ward, and together they kidnapped Catherine. Alas, Mackenzie didn't manage to stop them. In front of the nurse, they drove away. As a doctor, Robert knows that people with locked-in syndrome are prone to sudden strokes. The high levels of different medications in Catherine's system will cover the tracks. And it doesn't matter what the police think. Meanwhile, Mackenzie was heading to the estate. Lena received a message from the nurse, which said, "I know that Catherine tried to save you," and he ran her over. Lena realized that Catherine hadn't actually tried to take her life, and she asked Robert to immediately wipe down the car so the police wouldn't find any fingerprints. Now, thanks to Mackenzie, Lena knows that Catherine was aiming at Robert, not her. When she fired a shot, she damaged his tire and fell off her horse. But even that didn't stop Robert, who was now chasing Catherine. At some point the woman's strength left her, and she fell. Robert stopped the car. Catherine tried to convince him to let Lena go. As long as they had her diary, she couldn't harm them. This didn't convince Robert, so Catherine began to threaten that she would tell everyone the truth. Robert decided to silence her forever. In the present, Lena asked Catherine if she had really tried to save her life. Catherine blinked. Robert returned, ready to finish what he had started. While he was mixing the medications, Lena took a knife from the kitchen and crept up behind Robert, but he suddenly turned toward her. Robert didn't notice the knife, and Lena said that she wanted to do it herself. Robert handed Lena the syringe, not expecting it to be used against him. The dose wasn't enough for Robert to lose consciousness immediately, but he felt a sharp weakness. Taking advantage of this, Lena took his life. The police arrived. Lena asked Mackenzie what she would tell the officers. The nurse remained silent while Lena held Catherine's hand. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.